This is Scott Spears, and I'd like to welcome you to a very special edition of Scott Spears Now, and I'm going to tell you about the gentleman to my right here in just a second, because we have a big event coming up here in Marion this coming Saturday, November 2nd at 4:30 p.m. at All Occasions Catering, 6989 Waldo, Delaware Road in Waldo, Ohio. It is the 14th annual Dinner with the Presidents. It is going to be something to be sure. I'm not going to run down the whole list, but a whole list of presidents will be there. Benjamin Harrison, Herbert Hoover, Harry Truman, James Madison, Andrew Johnson, U.S. Grant, Chester Arthur, Teddy Roosevelt, of course Warren Harding, and Lou Henry Hoover, the 31st presidential first lady, will also be there. And the master of ceremonies of this whole thing is Colonel Edmund W. Starling, the White House Secret Service agent from 1914 to 1943, serving Presidents Wilson, Harding, Coolidge, Hoover, and Roosevelt. So that is going to be something. Now, the man to my right... Are you
going to read that?
You got to read that. Read that. Please do.
No, go ahead.
Now, the man to my right is former President of the United States who got up today from his slumber to join us here on the program. The extent that people go to be on this program is incredible. We've had President Harding on this show, so this is our second president on the show. This is James Buchanan. Now, I'm going to give you a little background here. James Buchanan was the 15th President of the United States, 1857 to 1861, served immediately prior to the American Civil War. He remains the only president to be elected from Pennsylvania and to remain a lifelong bachelor. Tall, stately, stiffly formal, in the high stock he wore around his jaws, James Buchanan was the only president who never married. Presiding over a rapidly dividing nation, Buchanan grasped inadequately the political realities of the time, relying on constitutional doctrines to close the widening rift over slavery. He failed to understand that the North would not accept constitutional arguments which favored the South, nor could he realize how sectionalism had realigned political parties. The Democrats split, the Whigs were destroyed, giving rise to the Republicans. Now, I've got President Buchanan's biography here, but we want to hear it from President Buchanan himself. President Buchanan, you were a little iffy on the introduction there. What did you like, what did you not like?
Well, most of it I didn't like.
Now, why did you not like it, President
you
Buchanan?
ran me down so badly, and unfortunately I've looked at the history books, and that's pretty much the way a lot of the history books say. But they failed to realize that I was stuck in a situation where I did understand why the Southern government wanted to maintain slavery and wanted to maintain their status quo because they were making money with cotton and tobacco and that sort of thing. And so I felt bad that we were going to yank that away from them and take food off the tables of their families. And people forget about that side of the story. I did try to be as understanding of both sides as I could, and a lot of people saw that as being kind of wishy-washy. And I'm sorry they felt that way, but I tried the best I could. I must say, if you'll also look in the history books and look at my previous political affairs, I was considered a very fine politician. When I was a senator, when I was in the different levels of politics on my way up the ladder, I was kind of a reticent presidential candidate. I knew that there would be a lot of problems, but I also knew that I deserved a chance at it, and so therefore, and the nice things about being the president at the time were that I pretty much had a free hand, and unfortunately that looks bad in the history books.
Now, I would just like to point out that I did not write that. So I don't think
okay.
I don't think I wrote or I don't think I ran you down. I think this is the biography I was given prior to the show.
Okay. Well, it didn't. It also didn't tell you that I was considered a very humorous dinner guest. People loved to sit with me and talk with me, and they laughed a lot with me. But when I got into the presidential situation, it was pretty rough. Me going into the president's office was like your current ex-president. There were a lot of people that just didn't like me, and I'm afraid that's what your age is going through right now. Whether you like one or hate the other, or which way you feel about it.
Now, I think it's interesting to point out here, now this has nothing to do with your politics, which we'll get into, but it describes you, this came from the presidential website, tall, stately, stiffly formal, in the high stock he wore around his jowls, Jowls.
Yes.
Yes. So, now we know what tall is, we know what stately is, stiffly formal. Would you call yourself that, President Buchanan?
Once I got into the president's office, I felt it was incumbent upon me to be formal. And
Stiffly.
Well, that's somebody's word. That wasn't the way I introduced myself, of course. But I was a little bit more formal than a lot of people expected me to be, yes. When I was in the lower levels of politics, I was really the life of the party and not so stiff.
Now, in the high stock, stiffly formal, in the high stock he wore around his jowls.
I have no idea what that means.
I don't know. It's the presidential website right there. See, on the jowls.
Well, they make up a lot of stuff about me. I mean,
Do they?
Yeah.
But what is this thing? Describe your outfit, because it's quite a dapper outfit.
This is kind of the tie of the era, the bow tie of the era.
That's a bow tie.
Yeah, it folds over
That's
itself.
interesting.
It's an ascot-ish type.
I like the ascot.
And I wear a long-tailed coat.
Now, is
most
that
of the
a
time.
top coat?
It's I forget what they call it now. It's but it's a tailed coat.
Tailed coat.
Yeah.
Like a tuxedos used to have.
Yeah. Morning coat, I believe they call it. And we always dressed fairly dark. You didn't wear tans or pinks or things like that.
That's a nice looking vest you have on.
Well, I appreciate your compliment on it. That was given to me by Lou, my right-hand lady.
We're going to talk about her in a second, because there's some stories there. But let's talk about the hat, because I know this is television, and people see the hat. That's not normal.
It was fairly normal in my day.
Really?
You probably would see 30% of the politicians wearing top hats.
Well,
you saw the gentleman that followed me, Mr. Lincoln.
I wanted to bring this up, that Mr. Lincoln becomes president after you, and he has a hat. Now, it is sort of similar to your hat, except it's more narrow and taller, called a stovepipe hat. So this is just a regular hat?
I'll have to ask Fred, the man that gave it to me.
Well, no. We all get our clothes from somewhere, you know?
I would say this was considered a stovetop cap.
Now,
Hat.
when this was being tailored for you, President Buchanan, was it taken from a picture of you?
It was not.
It was not.
No.
Are there any pictures of you?
Very few, and they are
Portraits, I guess
they're all over the place. Some of them make me look terrible. Some of them make me look very handsome. I was losing my hair, as I am, as you see.
That's why you wear the hat.
That's why I wore the hat. A lot of people thought that I was handsome. I never thought of myself as a handsome person, but a lot of people suggested that I was, and I had a pleasant smile, so I could get away with wearing kind of large clothes, top hats, and that sort of thing.
It's spiffy.
Thank you.
I like it. Born into a well-to-do Pennsylvania family in 1791, you are a graduate of Dickinson College, and you were a gifted debater and learned the law.
Always was gifted at debating, and yes, I did learn the law. Kind of interesting, I didn't go to a formal law school initially, but I did start to learn it because I wanted to learn it. Most of my friends who were in the law at the time, well, I wouldn't say most of them, about half and half, didn't even graduate from a law school. And I would say many of them didn't even graduate from a high school. So I did that, and I was born in Cove Gap, and that's down in southeastern Pennsylvania. Little tiny town. And yes, my father was pretty well off. And we had a pretty good life. I wouldn't say it was perfect or idealistic, but it was a good, easy, comfortable life.
I hate to get into some of the iffy stuff here, but we got to. You have a little bit of an iffy life there, President Buchanan.
A little.
Little bit. Now, this is from the presidential biography. When Republicans won a plurality in the House in 1858, every significant bill they passed fell before Southern votes in the Senate or a presidential veto. The federal government reached a stalemate. Now, slavery is an issue here,
Yes.
President Buchanan. So what's your issue there?
Well, like I said earlier, I was always sympathetic with the Southern views because I understood why they were so concerned about being cut off. Eventually, it turned into the Civil War, as you know, but there was a lot of rumor of cutting the South off and letting them adrift out into the Atlantic Ocean at the time. So many of my friends in the South, I felt that was not the right thing to do for them. So I tried to stand up for them in a situation where they were losing power because of the problem of slavery. I was not a slave. I was not a slave holder. I did not have slaves, but I did. I understood why they needed it.
Now, this is a little sketchy here,
Sure.
President Buchanan. Sectional strife rose to such a pitch in 1860 that the Democratic Party split into the northern and southern wings, each nominating its own candidate for the presidency. Consequently, when the Republicans nominated Abraham Lincoln, it was a foregone conclusion that he would be elected, even though his name appeared on no Southern ballot. I don't know if people know that or not.
I didn't know that, and I was there.
You were there. Rather than accept a Republican administration, the Southern fire eaters advocated secession. Interesting. President Buchanan, you were dismayed and hesitant and denied the legal rights of the states to secede, but held that the federal government legally could not prevent them. You hoped for compromise, but secessionist leaders did not want compromise.
It was kind of interesting because earlier in the decade, the Northerners thought that secession or forcing the South not out, they didn't really want to separate the two, but forcing them into a situation where they were subservient to the North was a good idea. Well, what it did is it made them very angry. And so it kind of caused a separation between North and South. And then the Southern people, my Southern friends, just couldn't take it anymore. And they decided that the best thing to do was to secede.
And here you get a little more sketchy. Then you took a more militant track when this happened. As several cabinet members resigned, you appointed Northerners and sent the Star of the West to carry reinforcements to Fort Sumter. On January 9, 1861, the vessel was far away. You reverted to a policy of inactivity that continued until you left office.
It got quite ugly.
Apparently.
And I felt the best thing to do was to hold my powder in my waistcloth and not try to fire on either side. I thought it was the best thing to do is to be to go both ways. Now a lot of people call that I don't remember what they used to call me, but it was not a good thing to allow both sides to be that way. I thought it was the most prudent thing because I thought it would keep us from having a civil war. Unfortunately, after I left, it just got worse.
Now, let's talk about you getting elected. Who did you run against? How did that happen?
Oh boy, you're going back too far. I don't remember who I ran against.
But you won.
Yes, I
Yes.
did. But it was not an easy victory, if I recall correctly.
You were a Democrat.
Yes.
Yes.
I had been I think they called us Federalists. And then that was taken over by it became the Democrats. And if you look at history, you'll note that my predecessor, the person that followed me, Lincoln, was a Republican. So that was kind of the beginning of the Democratic and Republican controversies. And now a lot of the things that we believed in as Democrats back then are what the Republicans believe in now. And I think a lot of my friends would say if I were around right now, I would be leaning that way because I really felt we should appease each other, and it just didn't work out.
Now, you won the Democratic nomination in 1856, but when the Democratic Party split in 1860, which was the election of Abraham Lincoln, did you even run? Were you a candidate?
No.
No. So you were done.
Yeah, I was done. One term and out. I'd had enough.
Now, what, bored?
I'm sorry?
Were you bored with the job?
No, absolutely not bored. No. It was a tough job.
You knew that there was trouble because the Democratic Party had split, and Abraham Lincoln was he's a big deal.
Well, I just knew that it was not going the right direction for my party. And I felt the best idea was get out and let them decide for themselves. Because I didn't agree with either side at the time, quite frankly. Like I said earlier, I was pretty much in the middle of the road for everybody. And that's what made them hate me so many times.
So why did you not take a stance on slavery?
I felt most of my friends in government were from the South, and most of them had slaves. I didn't want to cast aspersions upon their character, and yet I knew that the side of freedom for the slaves was probably the correct side, but I didn't want my Southern friends to, lose their homes, lose their families, all that sort of thing. So I kind of stayed in the middle and let that go.
Now, as your successor comes in, Abraham Lincoln, this obviously becomes an issue for him that he does handle.
Yeah, and I don't think at the beginning of him coming in, I don't think it was known that he was so violently for freedom. He didn't play that card a lot. Much like I didn't play the other side of that card. But he was a much better orator than I was. I was a good orator, but not like he. He could say 2 sentences and make you fall in love with him. So that was kind of a struggle. I knew that was coming, and that's another reason why I didn't stay on.
Now, how do you feel as you're watching this play out as the president prior to Abraham Lincoln? Because you retired to Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Your home.
Yeah.
Wheatland.
Yeah. I retired to Wheatland and had an enjoyable life after that. I mean, it was, I can't remember how long I lived after that, but it was not it was fairly decent amount of time that I lived.
7 years.
After I left, and thank you.
You're welcome.
People
people
don't forget those things.
People don't want to remember their death. I understand that.
But yeah, I enjoyed that, and I had a very peaceful 5 years after I left.
And then 2 years.
Well, you know how things are back in our day. The doctors weren't so good. The
Civil War's going on.
Civil War's going on. The medicine isn't so good. People didn't like me.
Didn't like you?
No.
Why not?
Because I kind of played the middle of the road.
And Abraham Lincoln, did you resent his popularity?
I stayed away from him. I didn't really get involved in that situation. If somebody picked my brain at the time, I probably resented not about him taking over a little, but I was just glad to get home to Wheatland.
Now, Andrew Johnson, his vice president, any thoughts on him?
Didn't get to know him very well. I think he was closer to the type of person that I was, more of a middle of the roader. But I really didn't get to know him so very much.
Do you know any of the well-known people of the time? Did you have any good relationships with them?
I was pretty much by myself.
Because
once I became president, people didn't come and see me very much.
Did you know any of the U.S. Grants or the Andrew Johnson, or what we talked about, Andrew Johnson, Stonewall Jackson, people like that?
I got to know
Generally,
them in relationships that you have when you're in politics. You know, we weren't drinking buddies, but I did get to know them. Wasn't very fond of Mr. Jackson. He was kind of a hard nose.
Now it's interesting. You were President Polk's Secretary of State, and Pierce's Minister to Great Britain. So you were involved in administrations.
Yes, I was.
Prior.
And I was deemed to be very successful under Polk, and also as the what was
Pierce?
Yeah, but what was my title? I forgot.
Secretary of State.
Yeah, I was seen as very successful in those positions because of my middle of the road stance, I believe.
So, did you have any type of relationship with President Polk or President Pierce?
Yes, President Polk and I were good friends. Pierce, we were friendly, but I didn't know him as well.
Well, he sent you to Great Britain, Minister to Great Britain.
Right. So, you, of course, know him. But that was on the recommendation of Mr. Polk, President Polk.
So President Polk told you to stick around in the administration.
A lot of people at that time thought I should hang in there because I had been so good at other positions below. And yes.
Why'd you run for president?
I'm trying to remember. I wanted to, by the time the position came open, it was obvious that it wasn't going to anybody in particular, especially the Republicans. I didn't think anybody had a handle on it in the Republican Party. And I was probably the most celebrated Democrat at the time and thought I had a pretty darn good chance of winning it. And how can you not want to be president of the United States? So.
Well, it's also interesting. You decided to end the Troubles. Now, let me go back and give a little, because this is a big deal of the time. I'm sure people ask you about this.
I probably won't answer.
In your inaugural, you referred to the territorial question as happily, this is a quote, happily a matter of but little practical importance, since the Supreme Court was about to settle it speedily and finally. 2 days later, Chief Justice Roger B. Taney delivered the Dred Scott decision, asserting that Congress had no constitutional power to deprive persons of their property rights in slaves in the territories. Southerners were delighted, but the decision created a furor in the North. You decided to end the Troubles in Kansas by urging the administration of the territory as a slave state. Although you directed your presidential authority to this goal, you further angered the Republicans and alienated members of your own party. Kansas remained a territory. Why would you do such a thing?
And Kansas broke into its own civil war. I mean, it blew up.
Yeah, but why would you go to... You wanted to end the troubles in Kansas, so you urged them, you directed them, presidential authority, to become a slave state.
I felt that was the going feeling of the people of that territory. I also felt that it was probably the safest thing for my position, quite frankly. I thought that Kansas, as you know if you look at a map, is pretty close on the border there. And it's probably a little more northern state than southern state, but I felt that if we didn't do that, all hell was going to break loose, and it did anyway.
Well, it sounds as if you made the statement earlier that you really didn't want to be president any longer, and that maybe it doesn't sound that way. It sounded like you had no chance of any longer being president after this little scuttlebutt, because it seemed like your party had left you behind.
Well,
you didn't leave the party, they left you.
In essence, that is what happened, but I was good and tired of it by then.
Well, when you alienated them, they were just as tired of you.
You weren't there.
Well, that's what the paperwork says. That's what the paperwork says. That's interesting, though. You really misjudged that one.
Yes, I think if I had it to do over again, I would not have done it the way I did it.
And possibly could have been reelected.
If I had wanted to.
If you had wanted to. Certainly could have stayed in good standing with the party.
Yeah, that would have helped. Yeah.
It certainly would have helped. But no, it's this quote. This is the only quote we have from you. That you thought the territorial question was going to be happily a matter of little importance, practical importance. And you thought the Supreme Court was going to come in there and settle that speedily and finally.
I certainly did.
And they did not.
And they did not. And that's what really caused the Kansas War. Yeah.
Had they decided it and not come up with the Dred Scott decision, that would not have been on your head.
You're absolutely right. I would have not been in your history books as one of the bottom presidents.
So you were probably not invited to the Christmas party of Chief Justice Roger B. Taney, because 2 days after you said that, he delivered the Dred Scott decision and made you look kind of foolish.
And I hated that decision, but yeah, no, I wasn't invited to his party, and
I bet he wasn't invited to the White House
party.
But I mean, do you think? I mean, this is just a think question. Do you think that he was out to get you in a way? 2 days later, after you make this quote as President of the United States, he delivers this decision, which is an exact opposite of what you had said.
I hope he wasn't doing that intentionally. I hope he weighed all the different things and went that way on his best interest. I hope that always happens with our judicial leaders.
Now, I don't think I've said this yet, but President Buchanan will be one of the presidents at the big Dinner with the Presidents, 14th annual, this coming Saturday, November 2nd at 4:30, All Occasions Catering, 6989 Waldo, Delaware Road in Waldo, Ohio, amongst the other wonderful people. James Madison, Martin Van Buren, Andrew Johnson will be there. Hey, you can catch up, you can get to know each other.
Yeah, give each
U.S.
other
Grant will be there.
Oh, well, good.
You can meet him as well.
Kind of liked him.
Yeah?
He was a tough guy.
Teddy Roosevelt, Warren Harding, one of our favorites. So they'll all be there.
Didn't know those two.
Didn't know. Now, do you know what, well, we'll talk about this when we come back, because we got to go to break. But we're going to come back, because we haven't talked about it yet. Oh, the women in your life, and oh, the lack of women in your life. We're coming to it, President Buchanan.
I knew you would.
We're coming to it after this short but important break. Hey, Scott Spears back with President James Buchanan here on Scott Spears Now, the 15th President of the United States, 1857 to 1861. And this is our Halloween edition, by the way.
Oh.
Hope you enjoyed the decorations we put up for you, President
nice.
Buchanan.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Harvest time. And the big events coming up here in Marion, 14th Annual Dinner with the Presidents. I've attended many times. November 2nd at 4:30 p.m. It will be at All Occasions Catering, 6989 Waldo, Delaware Road in Waldo, Ohio. Saturday, November 2nd, as I said, 4:30 p.m. All kinds of presidents there: Benjamin Harrison, Herbert Hoover, Harry Truman, James barely, Martin Van Buren, Andrew Johnson, U.S. Grant. People who were in your life. Well, I don't think U.S. Grant was alive in your lifetime, but you didn't live very long after your presidency. 7 years.
Yeah, well, back then I was getting pretty old by then.
Lou Henry Hoover.
She was my niece.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, Lou Henry Hoover is the 31st First Lady. Your niece was Harriet Rebecca Lane.
Harriet, yes, Harriet. Sorry.
Well, she wasn't your favorite.
I need a drink.
Yeah. Well,
she was my favorite.
But you've been through the ringer. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. Niece of the 15th President James, and served as the White House hostess. Now, we got to talk about that. But speaking about White House hostess, this is what I want to get to, because one of my favorite features of this dinner with the presidents is that one of the highlights includes a buffet dinner with the featured president's favorite foods taken from the White House cookbook. Now, what is your food?
Wow. Quite frankly, I really like steak.
Steak?
Yeah.
That's what you ate in the White House?
Some. We also had a lot of deer.
Deer? Mm-hmm. Now, I was at this event last year. You were one of the speakers.
Yeah.
And what food did they serve?
I cannot remember. I'm sorry.
You're getting on in years.
I am getting on in years.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm older than I am.
Yeah, but it was good. Did you have some of it that night?
Oh, yes. I had a little of everything. Every one of these that I've gone to, and I've gone to 3, I've eaten some of the presidential food, and I like it all.
Now, the desserts. Now, they're top drawer.
I'm not a big dessert fan, but yeah, they are always very tasty.
Yeah, very good. Well, you don't want to mess up your ascot.
Yep. It's bad to mess up your ascot.
Tall and stately and all that. Now, here's the important thing. What did you say last year? I was there. I mean, not word for word, but what was it important for you to convey to all the dignitaries and the assembled groupage?
I pretty much told them that I was not a loved president because of my position. My position that was leaned towards the South, but I was a Northerner. And I also pointed out to them that I was I was trying to appease both sides, and that appeased no one. So that was in jest what I talked about for quite a bit of the time.
Only president from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's
to this day.
Kind of surprising.
Because it's the swing state.
Yeah, well, it wasn't then, but
I heard there was a lot of swinging going on in Pennsylvania in those days. We're going to get to it, President.
You youngsters.
I know, we're going to get to it, President. Well, because now this is interesting. Now, do you want to talk about your niece first, or should we get to the elephant in the room, as they say?
Well,
you're not a Republican, but let's get to the elephant.
Let's talk about Harriet.
Okay, let's talk. Oh, I figured you'd choose that route.
She's a lovely lady.
Now, Harriet Rebecca Lane, you did not have a wife, but we'll hold off on that. So how did Harriet Rebecca Lane become the White House hostess?
She was my niece, and she had a way. She was very bright and had a way of working with people, talking to people that endeared her to just about everybody she talked to. And I needed somebody. Everybody had somebody, whether it was their niece or their brother, or everybody had somebody that was kind of the gatekeeper and the mover of the stuff. And she was excellent at that. And a very pretty young thing when she was there. And I just enjoyed her. We were great friends, even though that's all. I mean, we were friends. And she was my niece, but she was she was the type of person that it was easy to like. That's what I mean.
Now, is this your brother or sister's child?
It was my brother's child.
Brother's child. Now, did she live at the White House?
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So, was it just you and she who lived at the White House?
Oh, we had lots of people.
Well, employees, but I'm not in family. In the personal quarters.
I believe so.
Okay. Now,
she did have her own room.
Did she?
Well, she actually had her own suite.
She had her own suite? Oh, tell us about that.
Well, everybody who works in the White House, especially at that level, has a suite.
And you had a suite.
Of course I did.
Of course you. Well,
More than one.
Well, sure. But now, what does the White House hostess? Because we don't have that. Is this what a first lady did?
Yeah, well, you may not remember because you're pretty young, but when Jackie Kennedy was on TV, I saw that. Basically, what she did was what Harriet did. She was just that pleasant with people and could go through the entire White House and tell you what this statue is, tell you what that room is, tell you why we have that thing hanging on the wall. You know, she just knew everything and enjoyed knowing everything. It wasn't like I was forcing her to do any of this. She really enjoyed her role as basically the First Lady.
First lady. Now, why did you choose her? Just because she was your favorite?
I don't know that I had any others. I'm trying to think if I don't think I had any other female relatives that I could count on.
Let's talk about females in general.
Okay.
All right. Because now remember, this biography came from the.
How much time
White.
do we have?
I know we got plenty to discuss this because this is the thing that is attached to you more than anything. Even all this.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, but that's it's interesting, and we'll ask you why you think that is in a second. But two things: you're the only president elected from Pennsylvania, and you are also the only president to remain a lifelong bachelor. And you were the only president who never married. Only one. 46. Never married.
Yeah.
Now, you were a tall, stately, stiffly, formal, high-jawed man, college graduate of the time. That was a rarity. You're the president of the United States. Why no woman?
Well, there was one.
There was one.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was engaged to be married right before I became president. Yeah, her name is slipping me now, so I'm going to just say I was engaged to be married to a very lovely young thing, and her folks hated me. I do not know to this day why they hated me, but they hated me, and we went back and forth on the date of the wedding, as those of you who are married may remember how difficult it is to figure out a date, especially when you're running for office of the president.
And the parents hate you.
And the parents hate you. It wasn't her parents so much as back then, really the mothers didn't have much of a say. It was
Her
her
father
father
hated you.
He hated me.
Maybe it was the hat.
Can't be the hat.
No. Maybe that impressed him.
But anyway, we were going to get married, and her father said, absolutely not.
Oh. But that was like an arrow through the heart.
Absolutely
Sure.
was. And I don't remember if it was a month or 2 months later, she passed away.
Oh, God, she died.
Yes. And
After you were elected?
I'm not sure whether I had already been elected or I was about to be elected.
Lord.
But
And she was a young girl.
she was young and beautiful and had her whole life to lead. And there were a lot of people that said she took her own life. Now,
We don't know.
we don't know.
Wow.
Her father, back in those days, committing suicide was worse than death. I mean, it was worse. The worst thing you could do. It was against the church,
Oh, certainly.
and still
You'd go
is,
to
I
hell
guess.
if you
Yeah.
did that, yeah.
And so that was kind of brushed over. I personally think she took her life. But
Didn't anybody see her
see her what?
after she was dead?
Oh, sure.
Right. I mean, wouldn't you notice if she committed suicide?
Not if you took
Poison.
poison,
Right,
which is
poison.
what we felt.
Oh, so you felt she poisoned herself.
Yeah.
I got you. It wasn't one of those.
Didn't blow her brains out. No.
No, not that. But I mean, you would notice the hanging. A lot of people.
Oh
did
yeah,
that in
no,
those
she
days.
did not do
No,
that. No, she didn't do it in a violent way. She
she just.
yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think she killed herself? If you
Well-
believe that to be the case.
I think from heartbreak.
But I thought you were getting married.
Yeah, but her dad said she couldn't, and that was more important.
Now, listen. Even if her father hated you, This is what I don't understand. This is why we're going to get into the next topic, because you know it's coming. Here's why it doesn't make any sense. You had been the Secretary of State to President Polk.
Yeah.
You had been I think you were, when you were seeing her, the Minister to Great Britain for Franklin Pierce, President Pierce.
Yeah.
You were a popular person, most likely to be elected in 1856 President of the United States. Even if her father hated you, I mean, you would be certainly an eligible bachelor.
Well, I thought I was, and her father was of the other party, which was...
Her father was not for slavery.
He was of the other party.
Republican.
I don't know whether he was for or against slavery, but and that's all we know about him. We don't know whether he really was a violent Republican or whether he was not. But he didn't like me because I was a Democrat. He didn't like me, I guess, because of a lot of things. So.
Now here's why this story gets stiff.
I know where you're going.
I know where. Well, you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
Well, because people have went there before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because here's the. You say she died of a broken heart because her father would not let her marry you.
That's correct.
But that's not really sensible. That's not. I mean, she's not. She wasn't a child, and in those days, people married people they didn't like.
A lot of women have committed suicide because they couldn't get married
I agree.
to their...
To the person they want to marry.
Right.
Okay, but a lot of people feel the reason she couldn't get married to you was not because her father was denying it. It was because you were a homosexual.
And that I'm going to leave alone pretty much because it's nobody's business what I was. And it came from, I lived with, became vice president. I've lost his name. Anyway.
He's your vice president?
He was Polk's vice president.
Really? You live with Polk's vice president?
And he was only vice president for a few days because he was down in Puerto Rico, I believe, or Cuba, and got sick.
Oh.
And so they made him the vice president down there. They inaugurated him down there, and he died before they got him home to the United States.
Now, why were you living with
remember
him?
his name. Everybody did that. Back in those days, very few of the government people who were working in, Congress. Let's say you're from, back then you might be from Illinois. You know how long it takes to get a horse buggy from Illinois to Washington, D.C.? People lived with, some guys lived with lots of other guys. I mean, it was a matter of, it was a lot cheaper to spread the money with 2 or 3 or 4 guys than it was, first of all, to take those long trips and also to pay the long, if there was a train, that would cost a ton of money.
I want to have a decent conversation with you about this for the viewers so they can make up their own minds. But that's true. I'm not saying 2 men never lived together, and I'm not saying it wasn't common in the 1800s, early, mid-1800s. But you were the 15th president of the United States. Of the prior 14 presidents, you're talking, you were living with you were the Secretary of State living with the Vice President of the United States. What Vice President ever lived with a Secretary of State of the prior 14? It wasn't like, you two were in college. You were the Secretary of State, and he was the Vice President.
I wish I could remember his name.
Matt, look up the Vice President's name. Look up Mr. Buchanan's roommate.
Yeah, it'd have to be his roommate, because
Polk.
he wasn't vice president.
He never made it. Polk, though. Dallas. Dallas?
That's the wrong guy.
Not George Dallas.
No.
He never became vice president, right?
No, he did. They inaugurated him down in...
Okay, Polk's vice president. Was that your vice president, Dallas?
No.
Who was your vice president?
I don't remember.
Let's look that up, too. I know you're getting foggy because we're talking about your sexual preferences.
It's a long time ago, too.
Is that the man?
Breckenridge?
No.
That was Buchanan's vice president.
That's your vice president.
Yeah.
Breckenridge.
Now that you say that name, I knew that.
Did you have a relationship with him?
He was fine.
Nice guy.
He was the vice president.
Did he stay over at the White House?
Not very often.
Okay.
Yeah.
He didn't have his own suite.
No, he did not have his own suite. But
okay.
what?
Here we go. Did you find it?
North Carolina Senator and future Vice President William Rufus King.
That's it.
All right, William Rufus King.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't remember the name, because William Rufus King is a mouthful.
Bill King.
Yeah, we didn't call him Bill.
Didn't call him Bill. William King.
And we were good friends and roomed together for probably 4 years.
4 years. But he's from North Carolina and you're from Pennsylvania.
And he was in favor of. He was not the same way I was as far as slavery went. He was not in favor of slavery at all.
He wasn't wishy-washy.
No, he wasn't.
So now wait a second. Now how does a guy from North Carolina end up living for 4 years with a guy from Pennsylvania?
It might have only been 2 or 3. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But
let's split hairs.
The way you do it is you meet each other on the floor of the house, and you say, "How you doing? My name is," and so forth. Shake hands, and then you get along, and you say, "Okay, I need a roommate."
Okay, now that I understand. But now, were you living with him when he died?
No.
No. That broke up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was in a different. Yeah. He was in a different world because he had been nominated for vice president.
So when was this living together?
I have no idea. I can't remember the years.
But it was prior. Was it prior to your political rise or his political rise?
It kind of blended into that. Yeah. But my political rise started when I was 22 years old. So.
Isn't this a little suspect, though, that President Polk took 2 roommates and made one his Secretary of State and one his Vice President?
Back then it was not.
That was common?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, like, for the reason like I explained. If you're working in a governmental office hundreds of miles from your home, it's a lot cheaper to live with somebody that you trust and like than it is to live on your own.
Did you ever live with your girlfriend?
No, we didn't live together. That was really taboo.
Okay. Well, why do you think people think you were gay?
Because I didn't get married.
Right, but you also lived with a guy for 4 years, and you did not ever live with a woman.
The people that lived with, at the time I lived with what was his name again?
William Rufus King.
Yeah, with William. The reason why people suspect that is because they're of your era, not of my era. In my era, people didn't suspect people of being gay. Matter of fact, they didn't even know what gay was.
Well, rumors circulated in Washington, D.C. at the time that, I hate to bring this up. This is sad. Rumors also circulated in D.C., Washington. Mm-hmm. Yeah. At that time, and they increased after King entered into the close friendship of you, who were a senator at the time. Mm-hmm. So this didn't happen when you were in the House in young boy days.
No, I didn't mean House in my young boy days. I meant
right, but you were
Congress.
Both fairly substantial men at that time. I bet you could have both forged your own house.
No.
But you were... Okay.
Why afford your own house?
There were rumors at the time.
Well, to hell with them.
It's fine you'd say that.
I don't think it's anybody's business.
I'm not saying it's
yours or theirs.
No, I'm just telling you what happened. Now hold on.
I'm telling you what I believe.
Now here's some more information I hate to bring up at this particular time since you're getting a little hot, but neither...
You wear a hat like this, you get hot.
I understand. But listen, neither of you ever married. He was a lifelong bachelor too.
He died.
But not when he was born.
Very young. No, but very young.
Wait, but...
Does it tell when he died?
1836, you were sharing a residence in Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now hold on. Let's get back
all
to the
the other
paperwork
congressmen and senators of those days, and I will guarantee you most of them were sharing with another male.
I'm not saying that you were not sharing. No, but you were living with a guy who also never married. Now, what are the odds there?
How old was he when he died? He was very young,
Well,
fairly
we'll get
young
it.
when he was
Well,
when
we'll
he
find
died.
it.
I don't think he had gotten to that point.
Okay. We don't know for certain. I mean, there's no cameras. But why?
I'm telling you for certain.
Yeah, I don't think you.
I'm
You're
telling
me
you for
what
certain.
for
I'm not
certain?
going to tell you.
Right, but now why not tell us?
Because it's none of your business.
I
I would say that even in your current age.
Now wait a second. How long did you say you lived with this man?
I don't know, a few years.
Oh, no, wait a second. You lived together for 13 years, from 1840 until his death.
I didn't realize that we lived that
Oh
long
my
together.
word, President Buchanan. Now, no wonder you didn't get reelected. Good Lord.
I don't remember a single
Getting foggy now
I
on
don't
that whole
remember a
thing.
single thing that was brought up about that when I was president, in the newspapers or anywhere else.
I don't think you were president, but until he died, you lived together for 13 years. So, indeed, the question I said earlier, now I don't understand this timeline. Because you were Secretary of State for President Polk, and he was Vice President, and you were living together. The Vice President, now, when does that happen?
I don't remember.
Why would you live with a guy for 13 years?
Because I didn't have the money or
You
a
now
wife,
come
so.
now. He was the vice president. You were the secretary of state. You were a senator.
You can
had
believe
been in the
as
House.
you care to believe.
I'm not.
telling you. I am not going to tell you. And I'm also telling you that in those days you look up any congressman and any senator, and I will guarantee you they lived with other people for several years.
I'm not saying that, but 13. And you both were on the political rise.
So what?
Some marriages didn't last 13 years in those days.
Well, I'd say marriages lasted a lot longer in those days than they do today.
And you both were bachelors for 13 years. Neither one of you ever married.
What can I say?
But you can understand why there would be... And by the way...
Only you have questioned me on
No,
that.
no. In Washington, D.C. at the time, there were rumors.
Oh, there's always rumors. If
Are
people-
there?
if-
I don't
if-
know that there are.
If people don't like you, they rumor something about you. Do you think there are no rumors about your current president and your current presidential candidates? There are rumors all the time.
No, and there were
Bad rumors.
There were rumors about the man who came after you, Abraham Lincoln, that he might have been a little, I guess it would be bisexual because he was married. But those are there.
Did you know his wife? Who?
Oh, you have an opinion on that, but you don't have an opinion on your friend here.
Well, she just struggled, that's all.
But no, I mean 13 years. You can understand. You guys are living together.
I don't understand. I don't think it's anybody's business, so I'm going to leave it at that.
I'm not saying it's my business.
Well, you're asking to make it
No,
your
I'm just
business.
saying. No, I'm not asking. I'm saying you can understand why there would have been rumors.
No, I don't.
You don't. Okay, well, I don't understand. I don't understand why you don't understand why there would be rumors.
I'm just telling you I don't. It was a different time. And a different...
If Andrew Johnson was living with Seward, the two men who followed you as Secretary of State and Vice President, people would have talked, especially if they were living together for a decade and a half.
I would say to the people that talked, it's none of their business.
And who knows how long you two might have lived together. The man died. You were still living together.
Well, he had just been nominated vice president, so I doubt that I would have. But
I think you're lucky that he died because...
he wasn't.
No, it was a good thing for him. But I'm thinking you're lucky he died because I don't think you would have ever been... Now, I don't think you would have ever been president because if you two men were living together and the press was tough in those days. They were nasty, those newspapermen. And if they had gotten word that the vice president of the United States was shacked up for 13 plus years...
How do you think they didn't know that we were roomed together?
Oh, I think they did know, but he died so quickly, all of a sudden you had no roommate. And now...
Why wouldn't they have brought it up 12 years earlier?
Oh, I think they did.
Okay, well, I don't understand your...
I'm just saying, when you are a senator, that's a little different than vice president and secretary of state. And just as the man becomes vice
How is
president...
it different? They're both very out there, very viewable.
No, but the vice president, we know the vice president. I can't name any other senators of your time.
Nor can I.
Right. And you weren't living with them.
No, it's just because it was convenient.
So why never marry?
Because the girl that I fell in love with committed suicide, and her father hated me. And I'm not sure which came first.
But where, okay, now see, where was she for those 13 years?
She died before, well,
I mean, after that.
somewhere in there.
Because he died when Polk became president, and she died before you became president.
Yeah.
Seemed like every time somebody became president, somebody close to you died in an unceremonious fashion.
It was because I was a murderer.
No, you were not a murderer. Oh, you'll answer that.
I thought he...
You'll come out to that. Oh,
I
Lord.
thought you wanted me to say I was a murderer.
No, not a murderer, but I'm just saying there's some,
Isn't it bad enough that your current books rate me as the worst president ever, that you have to run me down for that?
Well, you think maybe this is why?
I think people should mind their own business.
No, but I think it's a little shady and disingenuous.
Some of the finest people I know
Yes.
in this era
Right.
are gay.
1857?
No, in
my era.
Yeah, I've met
not your era.
I've met people from your era.
Right.
And some of the finest that I know are gay.
Oh, I think today you'd be friends with a lot of them. But I'm saying in your No, I did not mean that in a bad way. I'm telling you.
It wouldn't be a bad way.
No, I'm not saying it. Of course not. But, well, there was such a reaction to that, I didn't understand. But, no, I'm not saying that in your day, okay, there were not a lot of fine men that we were aware of who were out of the closet.
No, there were hardly anyone.
Hardly any. Right. So, maybe this is why.
There were a few artists.
Maybe this is why people thought this of you.
They can think all they want to. They weren't in my bedroom, and I was alone.
Well, was there ever anybody else the whole time you're president, you got to be an eligible guy.
Well, actually, when she died, I told everybody I knew that the love of my life had died and I will never marry. I told people.
Right, but were there any girlfriends?
No, I wasn't interested in it.
Any
boyfriends? No.
Well,
wasn't interested.
Because is it because of the woman committing suicide, or is it because of the man dying?
No.
Your 13-year roommate died, now who is the love of your life here? Let's get the
love of my life.
Is it the woman or is it the 13-year roommate?
It was the love of my life. Was the woman that I proposed to.
Okay. That's all I'm saying.
You only have a minute.
Only have a minute. But then we're coming back, and Matt is going to join us. Matt Morgan's going to join us, and we're going to continue, because he wants to know about your presidency, and I want to delve a little deeper in this. Okay. Because I think it's important.
I have to go home.
No. You don't have any roommates anymore. You're fine.
Yes, I do.
Your house is empty. Your house is empty. All right. We thank President Buchanan for coming on this program. And don't forget, Dinner with the Presidents with President Buchanan will be is Saturday, November the 2nd at 4:30 p.m. All Occasions Catering, 6989 Waldo, Delaware Road. All kinds of presidents, Benjamin Harrison, Hoover, Truman, Madison, Van Buren, Johnson, of course, Harding will be there. Don't miss that. The Historical Society puts on a great event. And check for the exchange, Matt Morgan, President Buchanan, and myself on this station. For this episode, for President Buchanan, Scott Spears heading for the dugout.